Caught a little off guard there. And for the sake of the sign language interpreters, who I'm sure I tortured a little bit yesterday, I'll try and go a little more slowly today. Good afternoon, Councillor Deans. I'm Rob Kittredge. I represent the Justice Centre for Constitutional Freedoms. As someone who is caught up in, as you put it, what happened in Toronto during the G20 and in some of the more egregious events addressed in the Morden report, I was encouraged to hear that you did your best to prevent similar mistakes and overreach in Ottawa. And in furtherance of that goal, you felt that you and the OPSB might have been able to intervene to help with OPS requests for assistance from other police forces or various levels of government. Is that correct?
That's correct.
You understood the OPS's expressed need for, quote, additional resources to mean that they needed additional police officers, correct?
Yes. After that February 5th meeting, when Chief Slowly outlined his resource requirement, not all 1,800 were uniformed officers. Some were civilian, but he made that clear at that time. Right,
but it was essentially people on the ground that
yes.
He meant by resources.
Skilled resources, yes.
Did he use the word resources to refer to anything other than people on the ground?
You mean like weapons, or what are you suggesting?
No, like I guess I'm just getting at the point that we've heard the word resources a lot today, and I just want to understand what that means. For
I think by and large it means skilled, trained people.
Right. While we've heard that the criminal code, existing bylaws, et cetera, may have been somewhat limiting, the OPS didn't express to you any specific need for any specific additional legislated powers, did they?
I do not believe so.
And your understanding was that while legislative change may have been useful to police, it wasn't required, strictly speaking. Is that a fair characterization?
I don't know the answer to that question. I mean, it may well be required, and it might be something's very useful. But in the moment, it probably wasn't going to happen.
Right. Do you feel that OPS was making effective use of the resources, personnel, and equipment that they had available to them at all times during the protest?
I'm probably a question much better put to Chief Slowly, because as we've made pretty clear, I'm not involved in the day-to-day operations.
Right. As a citizen of Ottawa, were you satisfied with with the use that they were making of the resources, personnel, and equipment that they had available to them?
Yeah, another kind of difficult question to answer, because, was I satisfied with the response the whole way through? No, I was not. But did that mean they weren't using their resources wisely? I couldn't answer that question with any degree of certainty. I was aware that they did not have sufficient resources.
Fair enough. And a similar question that I suspect will get a similar answer. Did you feel that the OPS was effectively enforcing existing laws and bylaws at all times during the protests, given the resources available to them?
I was frustrated with some of the enforcement efforts, especially getting calls from constituents and other members of council about enforcement. I understood the reasons that were given to us, that they had to put public safety first and the safety of the bylaw officers and their officers first. I certainly understood it, but from a public perspective, it was frustrating.
We've heard that during the protests there was an amendment made to the city's idling bylaw. Can you tell us what the time frame for making that change was, how quickly it was able to be done?
It was done quite quickly, I believe. I can't tell you exactly how long it took.
Would it be something on the order of a day?
Possibly.
Would it be fair to say that if the OPS required further bylaw amendments, these could also have been put in place very quickly?
Yes.
And in light of us having reached a reasonable set of agreements on my questions a few questions ago, So how would you say that the tension between yourself and the mayor interfered with the resolution of the protests? We've heard a lot about the fact that there was tension, but how did it interfere with the resolution?
You know, that, as I said earlier, I believe that everyone needed to be working together. You know, you can equate that to a team sport, of kicking the ball up and down the field in two different directions and you're on the same team, you're probably not getting where you need to go. And I don't think it was just the mayor and myself. I think that there were, you know, just listening to the evidence about the information that was shared with the City of Ottawa and not shared with the police board is frustrating to me. We all needed to be on the same team. And I think, you know, I'm not going to center out the mayor for special attention. I just think that, I mean, and possibly part of it was the pandemic and we weren't all in the same room. We weren't all operating out of City Hall. I was operating out of my home the entire time. And, you know, perhaps some of it was that too, because when you're not together, you're not getting that same dynamic as if you're all in the same room. And there might have been some of that too.
And in that, I understand there was some tension between Chief Slowly and Bill Blair and also some infighting at the OPS that may have also contributed. Is that fair to say?
I think it's fair to say that we weren't all in the same boat, rowing in the same direction at all times.
Right.
It wasn't optimal.
All right. You would hope that Ottawa would avoid the sort of mistakes and overreach that occurred under then Chief Bill Blair's command at the Toronto G20 in 2010. But OPS didn't really have a plan to deal with the protests. The city lost control of its streets, and in the end, a national emergency was declared. And here we are, hard at work on Ottawa's own version of the Morden Report. As much as well-intentioned people like yourself tried to apply lessons from Toronto's G20, you weren't able to prevent mistakes and overreach on a similar scale, were you?
Not entirely, no. Maybe we made different mistakes. You know, if you don't learn from your mistakes, you risk repeating them, and I think that's the benefit of all of this. Hopefully, we're going to learn from our mistakes, and the next time something happens, it will go smoother than it did this time.
Right. But this time, the crisis was mishandled by police and all levels of government, wasn't it?
I think we could have done better.
Thank you very much. Those
You're
are my
welcome.
questions.
Okay, thank you.